Welcome to another episode of Full Circle with me, Onyx. And there's just so much going on. And today is another episode about people don't know how to use the tarot deck. We get a lot of amateur people who think they're psychic, they want to develop their intuition, and they go, oh, I'll grab a deck of tarot cards and I will read. And then they end up looking at the pictures and going with the traditional meanings and spelling a sentence and then like only saying positive things. And if you truly work with tarot, you have to realize one of the big secrets is every one of those cards is a death card. So love and light and financial success and abundance and you're going to get your mate and is kind of fortune telling, kind of maybe there's a paycheck coming. Tarot doesn't really work very well for your everyday predictive egotism. You feeling safe in the world, you needing a story, you needing hope for tomorrow. That was the reader. And that would probably be someone who's not a true initiate into Western mysteries. So, what it looks like, you can tell immediately someone who is not initiated, who doesn't have a basic education in the Kabbalah, which is the tree of life, basic astrology, and basic numerology, and those people are not initiated. The people who say they're intuitive versus psychic, or they say they're empaths, they're not initiated. I guess there could be a psychic who maybe is afraid to say they're psychic, so they go with the word intuitive. Um, but I'm just saying that. This is my perspective. This is my video. You can get all bent because maybe you've created a persona for yourself, that you have these abilities. You may have those abilities, but you don't need tarot. And tarot probably isn't going to advance you. What oracle cards are for you? You're not looking for Western occult teachings. You're not looking to travel through the cube. If you're a true Western mystery school initiate, you find out you're in a temple, and the temple is your mind. And so the major arcana, the greater mysteries, those are doors into different levels of consciousness. That is the big secret. And with those doors, there are keys that unlock those doors or close those doors. Within this temple of the mind, there are hallways and rooms and levels, basements, pavilions, estates, mansions, manors, courtyards, realities. And so we tend to think that the tarot is what's written about it, what's allowed to write about it, is the outer teachings. Outer meaning most superficial, what the eyes and the five senses can see, and what the human brain can logically put together as a mathematical formula. But once you've kind of got into the courtyard of the mysteries and you start walking up those steps, your intuitive or psychic abilities need to be online to be allowed to even read the hieroglyphs on the temple. You can't. So, the hieroglyphs on the temple are multidimensional, fractal, holographic images moving forward and backwards in time. If you don't have your third eye working, you're only reading the surface level. If your third eye is working, you are now permitted to read them as a priest. And most priests worked with knowledge. So this is the difference. This is a huge difference. There is a knowledge that requires a psychic ability to ascertain, to extract, to use in practical ways, as well as in psychological ways. And so there are like 3 degrees of reading the hieroglyphs. There are 3 degrees in reading the tarot. And I would say, and so, yes, uh, someone who is intuitive may read the tarot. Someone who is not intuitive may read the tarot. But those levels, those veils are, there's levels and veils. And that requires the development of you to develop your faculties. When you learn how to pierce the veil with your third eye, then you can see more, and you could read more, and you can understand. When you learn to start to navigate within yourself, you are now in in a really weird way, the cube of space is an external kindergarten sketch of the actual cube that it's actually referring to. And I'm trying to remember how it was told to me by Aleister Crowley himself when he was talking to me. Yes, Aleister Crowley popped into my world and channeled with me when I was working with his deck. And he gave me totally different interpretations of the cards. So, what did we call that? I can't remember what we called the cube. But basically, as I went to make this video, a new level of information I received. And honestly, you have to have the foundation. You have to have the cornerstone. You have to have a firm foundation in order for anything to what you ever say land into something usable. So as I fished for my cards, I haven't been working with my cards for a while. You know, it's not my number one favorite thing. I am always working with my chakra system because with each level of advancement, you must sacrifice something. Something must be purified. Something must be purged. There must be a giving away of the old self, old resources because those old tools, they're not usable anymore. And your energy needs to go with using the new tools given to you. So after, and the rules change. So I really use martial arts as a metaphor for the development process. When you're like a beginner, a white belt, and a yellow belt, you learn some basic drills: kick, punch, chop. You learn to kind of put them together, kick, punch, chop together, and you might call that a technique. And you master those techniques. But then once you move on to like orange and purple and green, whatever the system is, you go, wait a minute. The way I was doing it as a white belt and then more advanced as a yellow belt, in a weird way, that was just teaching the body. Now, the way I do techniques and what's being required of me is completely different. Now, it's a formulation, a weaving together, and it's an advanced movement where all these things are supposed to be put together at once in one fluid motion. And then you learn that and you think you're the shit, you think you're awesome, and you are to an extent. But then you advance to the higher ranks, there might be another color in there. Like I would say for our system it was purple, then like I think brown, and then 3 degrees of brown. And at that level you've been in the school for like at least 5 years, and all of a sudden you're a different person doing a whole different thing. Yet very externally it looks like what everyone else is doing. It's just that your mastery of your own body, your own mind, and what you're trying to now spell out through the expression of motion is more critical. And also, you learn geometry, uh, about angles and circles, and you're learning about principles of motion like torque and rotation and load and pressure and gravity. You're now a scientist, a basic scientist, working with these components to maximize the power of your strikes. And then I never made it to brown or black, so I can only imagine. I decided my body and my path went towards meditation and yoga. So that's when I departed and became heavy into meditation, yoga, and magic. Anyways, and so same with the tarot. And so I would say I personally have been watching a lot of tarot readers online give their readings. And I'm like, these are fascinating stories, and nothing of what they say ever comes true for me. And maybe every once in a while there's an intuitive hit. And they're acting all excited. Like, ooh, look at this mysterious thing up for you. But then they say, oh, the death card isn't really death. It's transformation. The death card is more of a sacrifice. So it is a death, you know? And so everyone's kind of reading the cards the same. Everyone gives the traditional meanings. Like today, the Three of Swords came up in the reading for Pisces. And she's like, ooh, a love triangle, possibly, maybe not really. And she's thinking maybe this is a person of the past and a person of the future, and you have a choice. Well, that makes sense, right? And I'm like, no, not today, not in this moment, not with the level of awareness and perception I have. The Three of Swords and the heart, the three piercing, actually is a door into a very unknown dark place. It's a portal. And when I saw that clairvoyantly, the truth was being revealed to me directly, even though she was showing me the card and talking on a superficial level. I'm like, that doesn't apply to me. That card represents a new moon or an eclipse, and it is a portal into another dimension. And earlier today, when I was over by my dresser that has my crystals laid out in a certain formation, I felt the presence of Anubis. And I kind of dismissed it. I'm like, okay, what else is new? You know, it wasn't a big deal. But when I pulled out my cards to talk about tarot being so much more, the very first card I pulled was the moon card. And it has, they look like, in this interpretation, it looks like chess pieces on a chessboard. But basically it's a gateway into the depths of the the psyche, which is exactly what we're talking about here. And it's been on my mind on the back burner for a very long time. And the next card was the Judgment card, which is definitely a death card. Both cards are deaths. They're deaths, one from the physical world into the spirit world, and one from the spirit world and psychological world into the subconscious. And so there's a meeting ground that happens. And so when we look at what scientists are saying, they're like, maybe this is all a projection. This is all a hallucination. Maybe when we die and the brain is starving for oxygen, it's hallucinating these levels within the mind that we usually don't access, like a white light and a tunnel and a vision of heaven and a spiritual figure and a message. And then we do a little astral projection around the room, and then we pop back in our body, and we think we had a life in out of body. I think we had a life. We think we crossed over, and so the tarot cards can talk in very relevant terms of what scientists are working with. And so that's kind of a lot. And I feel like there's a lot of practitioners that are claiming to be occultists, magicians, wizards, spell crafting, whatever's. And then there's a lot of borrowing of stuff. But like I got started watching this guy who has a Western mystery school, and he has hundreds of videos and lots of followers. And one of his videos was an uncrossing spell. And I was like, this could be useful. You know, maybe I need to uncross myself. And then he talks about it. He gives this great elaborate story on how he basically just needed to clean up his house and pay attention to washing the floor. And then he referenced a lot of voodoo has powders and things that you throw on the floor for your enemy to walk over. And I'm like, that's a lot of talk. I mean, this is the modern era. And where is the occult knowledge? It's not there. So delete. And so people have, I feel like people try to make up these chunks of unknown territory. They fill it with religion, they fill it with spirits, they fill it with magic. They fill it with information like the philosophy and the science of how to do it. But there's not a lot of doing. And and so the true so one of these initiations that you're going to have to go through, besides just gathering enough basic information for you to even understand occult and occult science and occult art and occult magic, is doing it. And when you do it, there is an education that happens. You gain an experience. So the occultist, in a weird way, doesn't do techniques or rituals or spells to gain power, because it's already a known fact in the occult world that the more you do your rituals, your spells, your experiments, the more it actually automatically trains your mind to open its third eye. And the more you do it, the more keys are given to you, more doors are opened, and more levels, more chambers, more rooms, more hallways, more avenues to the mansions of the mind are accessible to you. And so, which is different than in religion. And I would call it New Age religion now. I call it New Age religion. I call spirituality just another name for religion. And so, if your magic is loaded with religion, you're going to find elements of power outside of you. The gods are outside of you. And you're invoking their assistance. Whether you call them angels or demons or deities, it all seems to be mysteriously outside. And you have to invite them in with a spell of invocation or evocation. And I would say that's like a religious type of magic. That's a mysticism versus an occultism. Occultism, it happens through the scientific process, through the educational process. You align with it and you come in contact with it. So it's very possible in a true occult experience there is no ritual, there's no candles, there's no circles, there's no chanting of divine names. That's all filler stuff that filled people's books in the Victorian era to make up for knowledge that they weren't permitted to have. You didn't get permission because your third eye isn't open. You can't read at priest level, well then you're stuck at superficial level with what you see with your physical eyes. So the initiations weren't like rituals, uh, you know, stay in the sleep chamber for 3 days and say a prayer to a deity and have a vision. And now you're a priest. Yes and no. Hell, that religious stuff is fun. It brings the masses, it makes it cool and people get curious about it. It excites the mind and can open a door. So the occultists or the alchemist, they're using religious symbols and rituals for more than a psychological effect, but it's to open a door for you. But so you may have had initiatory experiences, like you may have had a really powerful lucid dream where a divine being was there and was communicating with you. You may have had initiatory experiences. You saw a divine being like a fairy or something in your garden, or you heard a voice in your head. That's great and all. Uh, that's very minimal. Can you keep that door open? The scientific formula for keeping that door open is living a certain way, holding yourself accountable in a certain way. It's a lifestyle that allows that door to permanently stay open. So sometimes certain doors and windows open within the great mansion, palace of the mind. For and so some people do get access, and but they might just be in the courtyard. They might not even be on the steps. They might not even be in uh, the grand hall. They may not even be in like the penthouse suite, the master's chamber. And so we're all at various levels. So lots of humility. And because this mystery magical castle has so many levels to it, you could spend lifetimes exploring the West Wing. You may not even know there's a basement. You may find a basement, but then you might find there's a basement underneath the basement, underneath the basement. So it goes many levels deep, many levels wide, many levels high. And so if you now find out that your cards are like access keys, we swipe a card and the door opens. We do a fingerprint or a retinal scan. This is kind of like what cards can be like. But do you even want to go into your mind? So at level 1, mystery school mastery of a level 1 initiate, after it would probably be a little bit of education. So you could a little bit understand what's going on. You're like, whoa, Anubis came to me. I've been seeing spirits in my hallway. And, I might have some mediumistic abilities. Great. Uh, that's a very rough version of what's going on here and where you're at in the mansion. You have a long ways to go, and some doors don't open up unless they're in the right combination. Here we are. Do you even know where you're at? Do you even know how to get there? And so it's a lot deeper than reverse meanings. As above, so below, as within, so without. That is the master key, but you have to be able to apply that principle to the cards if you want to use them in true occult ways. If you want to be a fortune teller, you don't need to know any of that. And you don't need to do what psychologists and new agers and spiritual people call dark night of the soul, facing your shadow, the inner work, doing the real work, getting real with yourself, finding the golden shadow. That's all very superficial, but it all comes from the great mystery, that floating castle out in transpersonal space, the headquarters of mystery. And so you're learning to navigate, and you got a whole bunch of keys, a whole bunch of locks, a whole bunch of doors, a whole bunch of portals, and it's magical. So the rules in this dimension, are one way. The rules in the next dimension are another way. So it could be very much like Doctor Strange, opening a portal and reaching his hand into another room and pulling out a book, you know, or opening a door and that person goes into a desert. That's very much like what happens when you start mastering or working with the cards with an occult application. So here's the thing. No one wanted to do a cult. They all wanted to do religion. And religion said a cult was bad because it was teaching you how to be a god. So they threw in angels, they threw in Jesus, they threw in religious rituals because that's what the people would accept. They go, this is like church, so we won't destroy you. Oh, you talked about angels. I'm comfortable with that. So I'll keep coming to class. And so in a weird way, religion was so violent towards anyone being empowered that religious symbols were added. We see little crosses in sigils invoking spirits. We see archangels. We see, uh, you know, like the hangman looks very much like a Christ figure. So we see this, the religious adaptation. And we see that because people just can't handle, they can't handle it. They can't handle knowing that the keys of the kingdom are within you. There's the lesser work and the greater work. They can't handle the truth. And they can't handle that you could master your destiny. And they can't handle the fact that reality is more than just the law of attraction and chakras and thinking positive. So, oh, so it seems like where there's money involved, there's religion. And there's also not a lot of work. So the more work you put into it, the more doors you open, the more you investigate this huge castle, mansion, cube thing that the tarot offers you, the more personal knowledge you gain. But it's so experiential, it becomes a true book of shadows, which exists as a shadow in the shadows, made of shadows. It's only for people who can move into the etheric plane, move into the astral plane, move through the 32 ethers, move through the 11 spheres and the 22 paths. Those path workings is to help give you a clue on how to use the cards appropriately. It's pointing the way. And each level and each step changes you. So there is a depth. Every time you see deeper, it changes you. And so